Okay, hello there. Let's see what we got going. I'm hoping that I've got the DBQ. Do I have the DBQ? So here's what I wrote. Let me also pull up the. And hey, this is about first time about a week I've done a new recording. So hopefully I hadn't forgotten and the skills fade and I forget how to do things right. But I'm gonna go. Let's see. Yeah, this is it. What is this right here? Yeah, this is it. Okay. Um. So if I get rid of that and I don't think I need that Revolutionary War DBQ up. All right, so we're just going back and forth. Let me get rid of that. And that way I know. All right, so I'm just going to go back and forth between what I wrote. So I'm going through the whole thing, and I'm going to talk about what I'm pretty consistently seeing when I'm grading people's DBQ. And let me ask you to please, please, please watch this video all the way through. Pay attention to it. Come to the meet tomorrow if you're taking the APUSH test. We'll do another one in I don't know, 9 o'clock in the morning on Friday, same deal. Get your tail up and get out of bed, drink some coffee, and think about this stuff. Okay, you can do it. A lot of you have it in you to get a good score, and you've done all the things at some point during the year that you need to do in order to do this well. But you got to put it all together. You can't assume you're going to get it right. Don't assume you're going to get it right. You got to keep on pushing, baby. Let's go. All right, let's see. Dubs don't come easy. All right, let's see. Okay, so there's the question. Evaluate the extent to which progressive movement fostered political change in the United States from 1890 to 1920. So that's basically the dates, and I would have dates in front of you. That's the dates of the progressive era. So I kicked it around a little bit. And there's two things to say about, first off, notice that it says political change. So when I think political change, I'm thinking like Australian ballot, 17th Amendment, direct election of senators, 19th Amendment, women's suffrage, initiative, referendum, recall, and the vast majority of that stuff, Australian ballot, city manager system, the vast majority of that stuff's taking place on the state and local level. So, like the economic, when I think of our progressive presidents that we want to get in here, we want to talk about these guys. I'm kind of thinking about economics. So, like my initial response to it was, I'm going to go an X statement that the progressive presidents did a lot of economics, but however, A, they did some political stuff too, and then B, they did some. The majority of the political stuff was on the state and local level. So there it is. There's my formula. All right. But then I started kind of looking at the documents, and you're going Jane Addams. So I'm going to go, well, that's kind of interesting. And you can like do outside information. Can I make this thing go down? Come on, baby, go down. Don't get stuck on me. Go down. There we go. Let's make it a little smaller. Maybe then it'll go down far. There we go. Where's that? Yay. Okay, so it's going down. So I read a little bit of it. Don't ever read the whole thing word for word for word. Do not quote it. Do not summarize it closely. You'll want to analyze it. Use the information. Maybe a sentence of summary, but try not to quote at all. All right, so notice there's a couple of things you can do here. You get some outside information for telling about who Jane Addams is, right? The Hull House and the social work and, the assimilation for the immigrants and all that sort of thing. And then point out, what this document's pointing out is that, the party bosses, are corrupt and they're expecting like the immigrants to be corrupt on their behalf, and she doesn't like that. So this is about political as it relates to our question, this is about political reform on the state and local level. All right. So now, like on my paper, I had 3 columns. I had an X statement. That was like economics, and then A, national political, and a B, my most important point, state and local political. So I'm putting that with B, and I'm going to put historical situation, because what I want to do here is I want to show that I know what the document's doing, but tell all about Jane Addams. Then I am showing off my history knowledge. You've got to throw it on that paper, everything you know about the history. Do not hide the history behind saying the point of view of document 1 is anti-party boss. Well, big dang whoop. I mean, yeah, that's right, but it's not enough. So, tell everything you know. All right, so there I'm going document 2, and so that's national. Now, the question is it economic or is it political? So then I started looking at this, and I was thinking about it, and I said, read it. The great corporation we have grown to speak of rather loosely as trusts are creatures of the state. State not only has the right to control them. So there's a couple of things. Number one, you want to study the history hard so that you can manipulate the history to fit your answer. So you start to look at that, I'm going, oh, I see what they're getting at here. Yeah, they're taking on big business, so that's economic. But what are they doing? They're showing, what is Roosevelt doing? The square deal. He's showing that the government controls business. That's a political reform. That's not economic reform. So that allows all the economic stuff to get in under the label of political, and now we can talk about all of it. All right, so I'm going to shift that over to national reform. So my A is just going to be all the national reforms. Now I'm going to talk about Roosevelt, Taft, Wilson, tell that whole story. The whole story, everything I can about it. All right, because that's good. I mean, that's good history. That's the heart of the matter history, which is what you want to do. Heart of the matter history. That is what the progressives are all about in some ways. All right, and then my next question is, well, what then would be my X statement? And at some point in the process, it kind of hit me. You know what they weren't very good at was civil rights. So if I go down here to, let's skip a couple of documents just for a second, and bang, bang goes the freaking drum, right? Look at that. NAACP letter. They're moaning Woodrow Wilson for being such a racist. All right, so there's our X statement. What did they not change? Segregation. They didn't do one thing about segregation. And so then that's going to, so looking at the document caused me to adjust my X statement to improve it. All right, and the A. So whereas I had an okay formula before I'm looking at the documents, what have the documents done? They've reminded me of a better way. And so now my A has all the square deal, including the economic stuff. And then the X is the civil rights stuff. And there's outside information because Teddy Roosevelt had Booker T. Washington over the White House and got big backlash on it. Y'all read that. Maybe you didn't. Maybe I didn't talk about it in class, so you may not know it. All right, but there's my X statement, so I'm just going to write a whole paragraph. So let's go over here. All right, well, we only got 2 more documents, so go ahead and look at them. So, but again, I'm going backstory. I want to tell everything I know about Wilson and his racism and birth of a nation and Teddy Roosevelt, Booker T. Washington. Everything. What is the thing? Let me say this again. Use the documents to remind you of the history and to show off how much history you know. Don't let the documents use you to hide your history. If all you do with the document is you say, the point of view of document 5 is anti-Woodrow Wilson and anti-racism. Well, okay, you're right, but you're not showing that you know any history there. All right, so the backstory always allows you to make it a history essay. Please, if you care about your essay, write a history essay with document analysis. Don't write a document analysis paper that happens to reference some history. All right, okay. Let's see. Let's go back to 3 and 4 here. Now, these are interesting. So this is about crime. So I'm going, well, now I don't want to get stuck just talking about what the document says. What I want to talk about crime in this period. And again, I'm not really going to get bogged down reading it very, very closely. But But I remember that the police force was invented during the Gilded Age as a response to all the crime. So, I mean, urbanization. Everybody's crowded in there in the tenements and it's dirty. And so people get frustrated. Young men, especially, we know, get frustrated. So that's why the police force was invented. So I'm going backstory on that. I'm not going to, spend a lot of time thinking about exactly what it says. I might go outside the period and say, hey, later in time, Franklin Roosevelt's Civilian Conservation Corps was designed to get young men out of the city so they wouldn't commit crimes. But crime is a new Gilded Age urbanization issue, and so progressives are trying to address that, even though it really doesn't say that much about it in American Pageant or in our notes. All right. So then document 4. Always one thing that Heimler says is look at the source first. Okay. Hiram Johnson. So that guy's a governor of California. So this is our main thing. This is the point. This is letter B. This is state and local stuff. And then I look back down in there and I say, oh, initiative, referendum, recall. Now, don't just mention those things. Define them. So you're showing that you know what's being talked about here. All right. So then I'm going to tell the whole story of, the progressive faith in democracy, that, the founders didn't really believe in democracy too much. They kind of looked down on the common people, Shays' Rebellion, that sort of thing. And they kind of trusted the elite as being somebody like George Washington you can trust. But for the progressives, the elite are the industrialists and the party bosses, not folks who look out for the best interests of everybody. All right. And so they wanted direct democracy, Australian ballot initiative, referendum, recall. And so I'm going backstory. Yeah, you can say the point of view is anti-party boss. All right. But you want to go backstory. Historical situation is, and then you're telling about the progressive approach to democracy. Okay, so let's go over then to the essay. Okay, so I got it nice and big. So there's my contextualization. So I'm tying it together. Progressive era came out of the Gilded Age. I'm situating it, Heimler likes to say, in this Gilded Age. And then I'm going to throw some proper nouns in there and vocabulary words so that, the reader knows I know this history, which industrial such as, let's put an S on there. Can I put an S? As Rockefeller and Morgan, as well as political bosses like Boss Tweed's first name was William, ran the country in their own self-interest. The Gilded Age was characterized by such problems as monopolies and trusts, economic inequality, tenement living, and child labor. All right, so there's contextualization. Then my transition sentence. Leaders of the progressive era confidently attempted to solve these problems. All right, that's why they call themselves progressive. They think we can make things better. Progressive era was an abject failure to politically address the problem of racial injustice and segregation. So there's my X statement. All right, however, Presidents Roosevelt, Taft, and Wilson, throwing in some proper nouns, got Congress to pass legislation to address Gilded Age injustice. All right, state and local leaders were even more successful at political change than national leaders were. Therefore, progressive era was effective in making political changes on the national and state level outside the area of civil rights. So I'm trying hard to get complexity. They're doing it here, they're doing it here, here's where they're failing. All right, now, okay, so, it was fun to write. I enjoyed it. All right, so here's my X statement segregation paragraph. Progressive era was an absolute failure in the era of civil rights. During the, I need Gilded Age. During the Gilded Age, and the reader I know, if you do a typo or misspell something. During the Gilded Age, political leaders more and more put national unity over the racial justice attempted by radical Reconstruction, and progressive leaders continued to ignore civil rights. So in other words, they're thinking in the progressives saying we got other fish to fry. We can solve these problems. We can't solve, but if we do that, we're not going to solve. We can solve a race problem or a industry problem, but we can't solve both. Remember what was that guy who did the suburbs? What was that thing called? The brothers who made the suburbs in the 50s. It'll come to me. Levittown. So Mr. Levitt said, hey, we can solve a housing problem or a racial problem, but we can't solve both. Here are the progressives saying, hey, we can solve all these industrial problems or a racial problem, but we can't solve both. All right, and then on top of that, All right, let's get rid of one of those D's. On top of that, Wilson's just a Southerner and a racist. Teddy Roosevelt famously invited conservative civil rights leader Booker T. Washington to dine at the White House, faced a huge backlash when he did. So that's good outside information. TR stopped pushing for civil rights change after this experience. The Southern progressive Woodrow Wilson had an abysmal record on civil rights. So then I'm, citing the document there. Historical context. So I'm going back story. Wilson's racism was his own Southern upbringing, as well as lost cause partisans in the South sought to portray their region's history favorably. Wilson resegregated the federal bureaucracy. That's what the document's talking about. Most notably championed the pro-Klan movie Birth of a Nation. Wilson's presidency marks a troubling chapter in civil rights history. We followed the liberals in the latter part of the 20th century to pass real political reform on civil rights. So I'm even kind of getting myself some extra contextualization, or maybe hoping for some complexity there. All right. So then I go down. So now let's go with my national stuff. On the other hand, progressive presidents made real political changes on national level. Teddy Roosevelt's Square Deal sought reform on the of the 3 C's. So hey, it's a rough draft. Too many of these. Consumers, corporation, conservation. Much of TR reforms were economic, diluting the power of big business. However, there was real political reform as well. Even as economic legislation taking away the power of big business was focused much on industrial political power as was on economics. When TR sued the trust, he was the first American to stand up to the political power of big business. So notice what I'm doing there. I'm doing history. I'm also analyzing. I'm arguing that this is political reform when he's doing the economic stuff. In Document 2, TR speaks of the need to make sure industrialists can't dominate politics. Historical context was that TR sued, again, backstory, context, sued the trust 44 times and called himself Trust Buster. His successor, Taft, sued the trust twice as much. Where's my cursor? As Roosevelt did, and set aside more land for conservation than Roosevelt. Wilson's New Freedom program attacked. Man, I can't type. Are y'all good typists? I'm not. Attacked the triple wall of privilege. Tariffs, banks. So again, look at it. I'm just showing off. Hey, Mr. Reader, man, look how much history I know. Dub, you can't count off. You got to give me some freaking credit. All right, take it. Hey, young people, if there's anything in this life you want, you got to take it. Ain't nobody gonna hand it to you. You want these points? Take them. Take them, grab them in your hand and take them, and then say more history until that dang reader just surrenders those points to you. All right. In each case, the presidents did not attempt socialism, but sought increased political power over the political power of big business. All right. This constituted real significant political reform. So again and again and again, I'm finding ways to say, hey, all this stuff is a big deal and it's political. It's not just economic. All right. State and local. Here we go. State and local leaders made even more significant political change than the presidents did. Jane Addams started the Settlement House movement, a whole house in Chicago. Showing off my history knowledge. Document 1. Historical situation, document 1 is that Addams was basically the founder of social work. Settlement House, in addition to providing social services, attempted to provide new immigrants from Southern and Eastern Europe with civic education such as citizenship classes. So I'm showing off my knowledge of Adams. I'm tying it into politics. Most of these immigrants came from countries, politics, whose government was not democratic. Point of view of Adams' document 2 is anti-political machine issued across corrupting effects that political machines had on voting. All right, historical situation document 2 is rising urban crime. So then I'm going to throw in a muckraker. The muckraking journalist J.B. Reese wrote How the Other Half Lives, which chronicled urban poverty in photographs. Crime was a problem in the cities because young men especially became frustrated with overcrowded and gritty conditions of urban life. Police have a professionalized service was a progressive response to urban crime. Reforms like so then I'm moving on to the next document. Reforms like the initiative referendum recall as well as the 17th Amendment were political responses to the undemocratic nature of urban policy. Notice I forgot the 19th Amendment. 18th and 19th Amendment, forgot them. All right, so busy telling this other stuff, I just forgot about them. All right, but those would be obviously good things to talk about. Hiram Johnson's point of view in document 4 is anti-machine, anti-corruption. Johnson, other reformers like, and so I'm going to throw in the more famous Fighting Bob LaFleur. Remember him? Passed the initiative, and I'm going to now define these things. So I'm not just mentioning what the document says. The reader knows what the document says. The initiative, which voters introduce and vote on legislation. The referendum, in which voters vote on legislation proposed by leaders. And the recall, which is basically an impeachment on state and local level. State and local, local levels drastically change, increase the amount of democracy in politics to combat corrupt political machines. All right, so then the conclusion. Progressives gave up on civil rights almost from the get-go. Not sure if that's actually a word. And made no real change in that area. However, progressive presidents made real political change. No need to repeat the word politically. Even where their focus was on big business. Their answer to the problem of big business was to take away its political power more than to cut into its profit. So it's all about politics. So, I mean, I'm giving the history, but then I'm saying to the person, hey, I do know about this stuff. I do know that I've got to adjust this over from economics into politics. Finally, most important, state and local leaders took huge permanent steps toward government, which put faith in the wisdom of the common people rather than elite statesmen like those envisioned by the founders or the real-life political elites they encountered, the party bosses. The change enacted by the progressives was real and permanent. All right, thank you very much. I'm now bowing, because I think that's a really nice essay. Now, the problem is I'm the teacher. You're the student. So you've got to get yourself to a point to where you feel like you know the history well enough to just go to town on the historical backdrop of all the historical situation, the context, the backdrop of all the documents that you encounter, and to tell some real history about any document. So tomorrow, I'm saying this on Wednesday. Tomorrow, in the meet at 2:00, we're going to talk. We'll talk a little bit more about document analysis or sourcing. Maybe the first 10 minutes. But then the next thing we're going to do, and I'll get you another DBQ. Find another DBQ and I'll do it. Although I think I've now done I've done 3 of them. I'm not sure. So we did the Revolutionary War. We did progressive. I think the other year was it was a women's rights question, and we don't have a women. It was out of our period. But we're gonna hit the content after about 10 minutes of reviewing process, because what I'm afraid of is we're kind of leaning on. I mean, the essays I'm reading are they've got the right structure, but they're kind of leaning on the documents too much, because I'm afraid y'all have forgotten some of this material. And I could kind of take it for granted that you knew the material, or that my students last year knew the material because they were in class with me, so we're talking about all this stuff all the time. The distance learning it's not the same intensity of learning, I don't think, so it's a little easier to forget the material. So, I mean, we're going to talk some content tomorrow, okay? All right, miss y'all, love you, hope I can get to see you soon. Please, 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 please show up. We're doing 2 more meets. I mean, we're going to try to finish strong here. Finish, freaking finish. So finish with me, okay? You're invited, but I can't make it. Got to make yourself. Battle. Don't give up. Keep pushing until it's understood. These bad lands start treating us good. All right.